All right, welcome everybody around the world. Welcome to all my subscribers. This is a little bit different than what I usually do, but I do enjoy movies and I can do what I want on my own channel. So I'm going to do a quick review. I'll make it short and quick and not long and laborious. But for the first time in my life last night, I watched the movie from 1989 called Leviathan. And I was first introduced to this movie through Hack the Movies channel and Movie Dumpster channel. I watch both of these channels. I urge everybody else to go check them out. They're great. Subscribe as well. So, anyways, uh, I was watching Tony from Hack the Movies, who's really famous, by the way. Haha. He was on Movie Dumpster. I really enjoy watching him as well. So it was great to see Movie Dumpster do a review on this movie. So, anyways, that's what got me interested in it. So I watched enough of their review where I didn't get too many spoilers, and then I went and watched the movie late last night with the lights off. And anyways, here's my quick review on the movie. I'll give it a little score of my own, some thoughts, some opinions on it, what I thought was good, what I thought was bad. Nice little quick review for anybody else who might be interested and wondering, is it worth watching? So here we go. So Leviathan in 1989. It came out allegedly the same year or around the time of the other movie called The Abyss, which was, a sci-fi underwater thriller horror type movie. I haven't seen that one either yet, but I'm going to watch that one soon. And also Deep, what was it called? Deep Star 6, another one that I haven't watched, but in the same genre, underwater horror. So, anyways, Leviathan, in short, and by the way, if I'm going to say anything that's a spoiler, I'll let you know ahead of time. I will be getting into a lot of spoilers in the latter half of my little video here, but I'll let everybody know ahead of time. So, what the movie is about in general, spoiler free, is there is this expedition down at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, 16,000 feet down, if I remember correctly. So it starts off with in the movie. And it seems to be set somewhat in the future, but not drastically in the future. And we have this little station down at the bottom of the ocean, which obviously they can't do nowadays. And they have these specialized pressure suits where the people can go out and actually walk around on the ocean floor. And they're doing this mining activity to mine precious metals. All this is revealed in the opening scenes. So that's the setting for the movie. Okay. And this is a creature movie, a monster movie. I won't give away what the creature is yet. I'll give a spoiler alert when I get into that. So before I give an analysis on, how good I think it was and this and that there, the basic gist of the movie, and I'll announce spoilers when they come, is there's a crew down there doing this mining activity, and then they go off and they make a discovery. Okay, so first spoiler alert, if you don't want to ruin the movie, don't listen, right? I won't get too heavy into spoilers at this start. I'll save it for the last half of this short video. But quite early on in the movie, you will find that they encounter a sunken vessel. Okay? And without saying too much about it at this point here, there's a link between the horror element of this movie and that mysterious sunken vessel. Okay, and it's because of what they do when they briefly explore that sunken vessel that basically gives way to the rest of this movie here and provides the horror element. So, what I can say, spoiler free right now, is I think that the movie had a $20 million budget, and apparently it only made $15 million back in theaters or in total, I'm not sure, but I think it deserves better than that. This movie was pretty good. I do think it's worth watching. It's good. I'll give my little rating and score for it at the end, though. But nonetheless, it had a great cast, and I've got the little lineup here for the cast. We have Peter Weller, who is playing Stephen, Richard Crenna, who is Doc, the doctor, Amanda Pays, who played Elizabeth, Daniel Stern, who played the character known as Six Pack. We have famous Ernie Hudson, not saying the other people aren't famous, but famous Ernie Hudson from Ghostbusters and the like. He played the character of Justin. We have Michael Carmine, who played the character the Jesus, the Jesus. Then we have Lisa Ellebacher, who played the character Bridget. And finally, the last two, Hector Elizondo, quite famous, who played the character Cobb. And finally, Meg Foster, who had a small role in the film, but reoccurring small role. She played Miss Martin. So there's a pretty star-studded cast, and I think that each one of the characters, the actors, did a great job in this movie. Uh, they did really, really well. And watching them actually made me appreciate that. I think movies nowadays, in terms of acting skill, have gone downhill. I think all the actors, not all of them, but just generally speaking, I think acting in Hollywood movies nowadays, the quality has gone down because there's so much being spent on, hundreds of millions of dollars being spent on movies and special effects. And they're always using big name actors, and they're acting in these movies so often that I just think that it's cut the quality down. It might just be because, back in the 80s and in that time period, movies are more raw. And maybe it's just because everybody took things more seriously back then, like their acting and everything. Movies are a much bigger deal back then. But anyways, that doesn't matter. My point is that it's got a star-studded cast, and each of them did a really good job. Like all of the characters in this movie, even Miss Martin, who only appeared, a few times scattered throughout the movie, even her character did the character's part well. So it's got great acting, and I have to say that, for $20 million, they did a really good job at the setting, the stage, the environment. Everything was done really, really well. And I have to say that the inside of their space, it's not space, their ocean facility inside looked really, really good. Everything looked great, top notch, believable. It's pretty impressive. So, cast is good. The setting, the props, all that was great. I think the premise for the movie was great. Now, I'll start to get into some spoilers now. Okay, so when they go off and do their little mining expedition, what happens is that Six Pack, who's more of that wild character, um, his the actor is famous for his personality like that. He was in Home Alone as one of the burglars. Everybody will probably remember. But nonetheless, he goes and he's kind of a jokester in the movie, but he goes out, he wanders off when he's out there with one of the other cast on the ocean floor, and falls down into a trench, and he disappears. So the other character who was with him at the time, if I get the name right, was Amanda Pays, who played Elizabeth. So she's instructed to go off and look for him. And I have to say, the movie does a good job at racking up tension. It builds up anxiety and tension and all of that there. It's pretty good in terms of that. And so, because they have to watch their oxygen levels, and the pressure is always a concern, and this and that. So, anyways, pretty high tension. When she goes, exploring, looking around for Six Pack, you don't know what's going to happen to him, right? Well, it turns out that he had stumbled upon this mysterious sunken vessel, which happened to be very, very close to their underwater facility. Now, she eventually finds him, and long story short, they end up going back into their facility. Everybody's happy, everybody's safe. But he had retrieved something that he found on board, which is this safety box or security box that had documents and everything. So they're going through the documents, and they start to notice that they're like medical records showing that this person died, that person died. So they're wondering why all the crew is dying. They get the name of the ship. They look up in the ship registry, and they find that allegedly this ship is active duty in the Baltic Sea, which it clearly isn't because it's at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, very far away. So they start to wonder. I wouldn't give a spoiler for absolutely every aspect of this movie. But the reason I wanted to mention that scene is because something that I wanted to add for my own opinion and introspective here and thoughts. We actually get a nice little clue. And I've watched a lot of other reviews, even by other channels. Haven't heard anybody else mention this yet, but I figured watching the movie that there would be a little type of sneak peek, a little hint being given away early on. So I kept my eyes open, and I had the right idea, because if you pay attention, okay, if you pay attention when they discover the sunken vessel, you'll find something, okay? Spoiler alert. What I noticed was that there's actually the skeleton of a creature, not a typical ocean going creature, but a creature's right outside this sunken vessel. Everybody else seems to have missed that. But if you can spot it yourself in the movie, you'll get a little hint at what's to come. It doesn't give it all away, but it gives you a general hint of what the resultant horror and monster will be. So, anyways, they unload the safety box, the safe box, whatever you would call it, and inside is a bottle of vodka. Okay. Now, spoiler alert: this vodka allegedly has a direct plot line relevance here. So the spoiler is, and they give it away pretty early in the movie, so this isn't a major spoiler. But in their little prodding and research on this mysterious sunken Russian vessel, they find that I can't remember how they found out, but that Russia had done this, quite inhumane experiment where they sent their own crew out on this boat with a secret mission, unbeknownst to themselves, where they had been apparently using some type of mutation gene, like mutagen, whatever you would want to call it. And the plan was that they wanted to help create this hybrid type human that would be adapted to high pressure, very deep in the ocean type environment, so that they could utilize people like that for whatever activities at the bottom, such as mining or whatever. Now, this seems a little bit ridiculous and far-fetched of a concept, but it's not a big deal to me at all. Plus this was the 80s. We had lots of movies with some pretty far out there and extreme things. In the 80s, I grew up in the 80s. That was a time of like wonder. You know what I mean? When a movie came out with this really far out concept at the time, it was pretty awesome, right? So that's right. It's a little far fetched, but anyways, right? So apparently, the way they wanted to test this mutagen, I guess because no one would willingly take it, is make people take it without realizing it. And then you have the stereotype that Russians love to drink vodka. Not that you should be drinking on a vessel anyways, or when you're on a mission, but nonetheless, that's what we're told in the movie. So you don't know this when they first pull out the alcohol, however, from the safe box. However, due to what's going on with the crew at the time, the captain's like, hey, no, you're not going to be sitting here. The manager or whatever, but let's call him captain. He's like, no, you guys aren't drinking while you're on duty, because they're meant to be taken off the ocean floor within a day or two, right? They didn't want to be around there any longer. They didn't want to get in any trouble. They're really high-level professionals. So the captain hid the alcohol, replaced it with water to test it out, see if they would go and try to drink it and all this. So another spoiler now. So where things start to go awry is at first, when they had been going out and doing their little expedition in the ocean, just before they discovered that mysterious vessel, you see what looks like some weird sea spider thing, and it gets picked up by Six-Pack, right? And sea spiders are real creatures. I'm not fluent in species of sea spiders, but I know they exist. And it kind of looks just like a sea spider, but it looks a little bit different. So I'm figuring, okay, first I was asking myself, is it a real creature? Because it looked quite real in the first opening shots. I wondered if they actually had a real sea spider or something like that. But in either case, once it gets on board, it looks a little bit more fake, but nonetheless, that's not a big deal. So Six-Pack sneaks that little creature on board. He spooks out again, I'm not going to give away every detail of the movie, right? But he spooks out one of the girls, who's Amanda Pay's character is Elizabeth, and she gets him back by putting it under his pillow. Okay, so when he goes off to lay in his bunk bed, he reaches behind his pillow and the spider thing's there. He gets all upset, comes out to the crew saying, really ticked off, comes out to the crew saying that she put this thing in his bed and it scratched him on the leg or bit him on the leg. My thought and introspective here is, I haven't heard any other review mention this before, but I strongly think that this spider was actually the start of the monster. I'll give my reasons for, right? I didn't want to give away too many spoilers at the start of my video here and describe what happens in the movie, because I would ruin it for people. I think I still enjoyed the movie a lot, even though I watched, 3/4 of a review of it first. I spared like the last, like 30 minutes of the movie, the big build up and stuff. I still enjoyed it knowing certain things, right? So that's why I wanted to warn people here. You can go enjoy the movie even more than I did just for what I've said so far. I haven't really given away any big spoilers, right? But big spoiler alert. I'll do that when I'm about to give a big spoiler alert, which is going to be soon, right? But he brings a little spider on board. He spooks her out with the spider. She puts it in his bed. He gets scratched by it, gets all upset. Anyways, now we get into big spoiler alert. So if you don't want to ruin the movie, if you want to keep it more mysterious and suspenseful, stop watching now. I would actually kind of recommend that, but it's up to you, right? So not long after he gets scratched by the spider, we also see him drinking from a flask, because when you open up the safe box, there was a bottle of vodka, but there was also a flask. We assume the vodka was also in the flask. And his name is Sixpack because he likes drinking, right? So he was in the bed drinking from the flask around that time, right? So what everybody else has assumed is, because the storyline tells us that the Russians put this mutagen type thing, the mutator gene or whatever it is, in the vodka. Everybody assumes that the vodka's in that flask. He drank it and got infected. Okay? And spoiler, this is the time of big spoiler alerts, right? So I'm not going to keep saying it. But my thought introspective is that I'm pretty sure that sea spider was actually one of the forms of the monster. Okay? Because they bring the sea spider on board their vessel. Their facility is air inside. It's atmosphere, so people can walk around without suits on. You can't take an aquatic creature from a high pressure, situation and then bring it on board a low pressure, surface atmosphere, air atmosphere, and it not die, right? But when they did bring that spider on the ship, it didn't die. It was running around afterwards, and they had to poke it to death, right? So I'm pretty sure that that spider was actually one of the monsters. But it seems like nobody else has realized that. So anybody who has watched the movie, go back and watch it again. I'm pretty sure. And we hear the character Sixpack actually say, and it's why he's so angry, that it scratched him on his foot, or bit him on the, pretty sure it said scratched him on the foot. We find out in the movie that this the mutation gene, it can be spread like an infection, even just from scratching. We find that out later in the movie. We find out early on this spider scratched him. Very soon after that scene, almost immediately afterwards, long story short, he becomes very, very ill. The doctor, named Doc, runs up, comes up, does an examination. As he's checking him out, he flatlines, Sixpack flatlines and dies. He gets put on the gurney. The doctor covers him up with sheets. He decides, spoiler alerts, right? The doctor decides to keep it secret from the rest of the crew so he doesn't spook them out, because they're meant to go back up soon. Now, Meg Foster, who does a good job of playing this real cold-hearted corporate executive type lady, Miss Martin, she, works for the overall company that this team is working for. And they're always doing this like electronic rendezvous with her on the video screen. Again, it's with 80s technology, but it's still pretty cool. She has this big remote control. When she cuts the intermission, she points the remote at them like a TV and presses it. But anyways, that's still fine. Big thing too, right? Like an old cell phone when they first came out. But she's always very, very cold when she talks to the crew. And you really very quickly early on get the impression that she does not really care about human lives. And she's always telling the crew, well, at some point she tells the crew that there's a hurricane developing in the Atlantic, and they don't think that they can be, the team can be extracted at the original extraction date. Now, of course, to add to suspense, they get told that after things go downhill on the facility, right? So that adds to all the anxiety and atmosphere. So what we do find out later, big spoiler alert, is, and I have some introspective on this if I remember, is that that parent company knew that this Russian vessel was down there. They knew what had been on it, what had taken place on it. They knew that that ship had been destroyed by something. in that it was like a covert, like what do you call it? Like blinders over the eyes. Like I just can't think of the word. Like it was a lie, a cover up that it was still active in the Baltic Sea. That was all part of this huge, massive cover up, on behalf of multiple nations, right, to keep this terrible thing a secret. But with the mutagen, right? So anyway, Six Pack is dead, laying dead on the gurney. And what happens is that eventually, long story short, he starts twitching. And another lady who had shared his flask of whatever it was, the vodka, with him, she dies right away too. I wouldn't say how she dies, but she dies. She ends up doing it herself because she's afraid of what's going to happen to her, because she started to see, she was the only person at that time who saw Six Pack becoming deformed. Um, so she did it herself, if you know what I mean, so that she wouldn't have to go through anything. That didn't fully work, by the way, but nonetheless. So then the team comes down, they find her dead. So they put her on the gurney next to Six Pack. Long story short, they end up going back in the room at some point, and they see that the bodies have like mutated together. The two dead bodies have mutated together, and it's like moving and stuff. So at that point there, I believe it's only the doctor and one or two other staff who see this monstrosity like taking shape. It's still not fully alive and like getting up off the table, but you can see that the life is starting up in it. It's kind of reminiscent of the movie The Thing as well, but I really like that concept in that movie. So, anyways, going on with it. I don't really feel like this movie ripped off The Thing. Some people say ripped off Aliens, ripped off The Thing, and this and that. Yes, it shares very similar elements, but at the same time, nobody can really monopolize a concept. And I don't think it was that close to these other movies where it's really a big deal. I mean, in the movie The Thing, it was actually an alien that possessed this mutating, hybridizing ability. In Leviathan, it's got nothing to do with an alien. It's people created this mutagen gene thing to make people mutate into like a C-type, humanoid creature that would be able to do, exist and work underwater at deep depths. So quite different, you could argue. But anyway, so the body starts mutating together. So they go to try to get rid of the body, but they have to keep it secret from the rest of the crew because they don't want the crew to freak out. I mean, the last thing you want to know is you're on this facility for another day or two. You don't want to find out that they already know that one or two people have died. But it'd be a whole different ballgame to be told that they're mutating and becoming a weird monster creature thing that looks like it's coming to life. So they try to ditch the body and eject it out. And spoiler alert, one of the guys dorks out and says, "Oh, the body's moving inside the body bag. We can't get rid of these bodies. They're alive. They're not dead." And you watching the movie is like, "You stupid idiot." But of course, one of the guys, Cobb, who's played by Elizondo, unzips the bag out of dorky sympathy, not listening to the advice of the wise ones. And this monstrous creature is in there, the amalgamation of those two dead people, and it scratches Elizondo's character Cobb on the chest. And at that point there, okay, he's infected now. He's in trouble. And the other great part of the mystery is you don't fully know. You're not told at first, and you have to figure it out yourself how this mutation, how this monster, how this thing spreads. Okay? So anyways, they try to get rid of the body. They eject it out, but in the process, part of a limb of the body gets severed off and survives. And what do you know? It's pretty expected at this point, but the limb, this mutated leg type limb, starts swimming and moving like it's alive. It eventually starts to metamorphose into this crazy looking little creature, which is pretty cool. Pretty decent, pretty good, I would say, special effects, creature effects. In one or two moments, I think it could have been a lot better, but in these early stages, I think all the creature effects are pretty good. So you then have the typical, cool, frightening situation of there's this weird mutant type monster thing that can live after death, can cheat death, you know what I mean? And it's loose somewhere on the ship, kind of like aliens, like, you know what I mean? Like running through the air ducts or whatever. So that adds to the suspense. It makes it really good. I won't give away too many spoilers and too many other details about the movie, but that's where it gets really interesting, because I love that type of plot where people are stuck on, like this, they're stuck somewhere and there's no outside, like they can't escape it, they're contained. Aliens are up on a spaceship, you can't go outside of that. In this movie, they're stuck in this, at the bottom of the ocean, in this facility. There's nowhere else to go, right? So that's pretty cool. You don't know what the creature is going to, amalgamate or turn into next. You don't even know what the creature fully looks like yet, because it keeps changing and like growing and developing and absorbing other things into it. So that's pretty cool. um, But getting back to my thoughts and introspectives, with the spider, when the spider was running around on the ship after, Six Pack found it, was ticked off that she put it in his bed. Somebody stabs the spider. That's the last you see of it. Now, from the information that I've already revealed, which you find out probably before halfway into the movie, um, so if you hear this and my introspective on the spider, and you're watching the movie for the first time or you're rewatching it, keep what I said in mind. It'd be interesting to watch the movie again, because I'm pretty sure, like I said, that spider was the start of the monster. Like I said at the very start of the video, one of my little tiny spoilers was that when they first find the sunken Russian vessel, there is a skeleton of one of the fully formed monsters, but just the skeleton, right outside the ship. And because the cameraman ignores it, kind of, they show you it, but they don't talk about it or draw attention to it. That's what gave it away for me. And by the end of the movie, you'll realize, yeah, that's the skeleton of one of the monsters, right? It's got the same head and, big body and all of that. But also on the vessel, early on in the movie, uh, they find footage from that safe box, and I won't give away too many details, but they show a scene from it. No, was it? No, when they were using their own cameras following their crew, because when they did the rescue mission to rescue Six Pack from the sunken vessel, because he had wandered around into there, he saw the vessel there after he fell down into the crevice, and he's like, "Oh wow, I better go check this out." You know what I mean? And so, anyways, when the crew had their cameras on there, you end up seeing some type of footage, or maybe it was from the safe box. In either case, you see this old video footage of what looks like this really weird human skeleton. Now, they don't get too deep into it early in the movie, but later in the movie, the doctor points out, hey, well, if you remember that footage that we saw, that footage, zoom in on the skeleton. He's pointing out how not human it is. Well, I realized it when I first saw it. That was another dead giveaway for me early on in the movie. You can actually see what looks like tentacles. I don't know how they got preserved underwater, or if maybe the tentacles had bones, but you can see what looks like tentacles, and that's a little giveaway to what the creature looks like eventually. Coming off the skeleton, it had really strange eye socket shapes, like big, weird eye sockets. So, and the skeleton looked like it was a fusion of more than one skeleton. So that's actually a giveaway to what the creature ends up looking like and becoming. What the mutagen does essentially is it's supposed to, obviously it didn't work well, but it's supposed to turn a person into an aquatic type human that can live underwater and function underwater in high pressure without a special suit and everything, or be more, viable under the water than a human would be. We're not told a lot about that plot in the movie, but they mention snippets of it. But it's because of that principle and the genetic mutation aspect of it that this creature is able to survive and adapt very, very quickly. Okay, so that's why it can't really be killed. If any part of it remains, that part will start to transform into a new creature. It requires, do I have to give this away? No, I'll leave this up for the viewers as well to find out when they watch the movie. It requires a certain type of sustenance to help itself grow and thrive. So nonetheless, that's the emphasis of the creature, right? You don't find out what its full form looks like until the very, very end scenes, which I thought was kind of disappointing. I kind of wish that they introduced the bigger versions of the monster earlier on, because I was watching the movie having great time. The pacing of it was great. And when I looked down at the time, the duration of the movie, like how long I've been watching it and how much was left, I was shocked, because when you finally start to see more of the creature, Uh, I only had about half an hour left of the movie, if that. So that was a little disappointing. And when the creature really becomes visible, at that point there, it's like 20 minutes left of the movie. So I kind of wish that they had introduced it earlier on. But I found it afterwards is because the creature suit was very, very heavy and nobody can move in the suit. They couldn't walk with it. So they had to limit how much it was on screen. And I'll save my comments about what the creature looks like at the very, very end in a mega spoiler. But that's the basic synopsis. So the creature is running around trying to eat people, trying to amalgamate parts into it so it can get bigger and take on its full form, right? Kind of like how you got the mummy in the mummy movies. He needed to, have human parts to regenerate his body. Similar type of theme where it needs to amalgamate living things into it in order to become its full form, like that type of effect, which I think is pretty cool. It gives for a lot of suspense and horrific mystery. So, anyways, like I was saying, I'm pretty sure that spider had to do. Was the original form of the creature, and that was, in my opinion, I actually wonder if that there was, in the original screenplay and script, if that was actually part of the plan. Maybe it was the creature plus the vodka, or maybe at the end of the day they thought, okay, let's just switch up the plot to just the vodka. Other times movies get made and things have to change at the last minute or during filming. And if you're the average person watching the film, you won't even notice or think about these certain types of things. Then you read about it afterwards in research. You're like, oh, well, that was pretty interesting. So I wonder if we had a case like this here, because clearly that spider had to be the start of the monster, right? Like I was saying. And little spoiler alert, as you get halfway towards the end of the movie, everybody's wondering how many of these monsters are actually on board the vessel, because nobody really knows. I mean, it's left up in the air, suspenseful until the very, very final scenes of the movie. You don't actually know how many of the monsters are on board. Most people have the impression that there are 2 full-grown monsters on board by the time the end of the movie comes about. I almost gave away a big spoiler. But nonetheless, and it is cool that, you have to wait a long time before you start seeing more of the creature. That's fine and all. I just wish that the creature got to have more on-screen time. That's all I'm saying. Might sound like a contradiction, but not necessarily. The movie could have been longer too. I don't know if there's a longer cut or a director's cut, or if there were deleted scenes. But in either case, I'm pretty sure it was the spider that was the monster. I don't know if the vodka had anything to do with it. But what I can say is that if my theory is correct and the spider infected Six-Pack first, by all reasoning, he could have infected the vodka flask when he drank from it. And when he shared it with, who was that character? Bridget, played by Lisa Ellebacher. She may have gotten infected by it after drinking from his flask. And the reason why she did what she did to herself was because she started to feel dreadfully sick, just like Six-Pack was. She had seen his corpse on the table starting to change. So she went and did that to herself so she wouldn't have to go through those things. So my theory fits. Like with what you see in the film, it fits. If the vodka was part of the original, actual storyline, I don't know what to say. It doesn't contradict the spider theory, because, like I pointed out, you see a skeleton of one of the full form monsters outside the Russian vessel. That means that other monsters obviously had existed on that vessel because the crew turned into them, or at least one person did, or something on board the ship did. And that's what made it get scuttled or sink. That's the great mystery. I also wonder if, big spoiler alert, I wonder if whatever monster or monsters ended up spawning on that Russian ship, if they are the ones that actually destroyed the ship. It may not have been shot down by a torpedo and scuttled, as they try to suggest in the movie. Another thing that I want to point out with my introspective here is that, and this goes in hand with the spider theory, because you constantly hear the undersea facility like shaking and rumbling. And the crew, because they've been told there's a hurricane overhead at the top, they think it's just a hurricane stirring up big ocean waves and all that. They keep making reference to that in the movie. And the different reviews that I've seen of this movie, nobody has pointed out what I'm about to mention. If the spider was the original monster, the start of the monster on that ship. Because they kill it, they stabbed it, but being dead doesn't mean the creature's dead. It just has to mutate and come back alive. That spider was definitely alive if it was a monster somewhere else on the ship, getting bigger, growing. It could have eaten some of the sustenance. I wouldn't give away what it is that was on board the ship. And it could have become one of the monsters that was making all this noise around the facility, right? Because nobody else realized. I mean, there wasn't big spoiler alert. You find out at the end that there wasn't a hurricane. The parent company just lied because oh, this was pre-planned. And when they found out that they had interacted with this mutagen thing, they didn't want the people, their staff, to come back up to the surface. They lied and said they were dead and all of that there to the media. So what people haven't put together is, well, if there was never a hurricane, then what was rumbling the facility all that time so early in the movie? It was either the spider had become a monster, or there were other monsters swimming around outside the facility trying to get inside of it. That's entirely possible because you see the skeleton of a dead one outside the Russian vessel. So clearly, I mean, if the mutagen's supposed to make creatures to survive in deep ocean depths, then it's all fair game to say that when they reach their full size or whatever, that they would be able to survive in the ocean. So I just haven't seen anybody else point that out yet. But if they had really driven that concept hard in the movie, it would have made it a lot more frightening. Because not only is there a threat from the inside, but you would also have a threat from the outside. Because in the movie, when you hear the things creaking around, you just think, oh, it's the ocean waves. And you think it's the hurricane that they've been told is there. But there is no hurricane. You know what I mean? That would have made it even scarier, thinking that some big monster could come in from somewhere. So I think they could have made the movie even better than they did. But I think it's still good as it is. So those are some of my introspectives that I wanted to mention. I won't give away too much more detail of the movie so that people can go out and enjoy it. One mega spoiler is, I hate to say it, if you don't want to hear what the monster looks like or anything else about the full form monster, then don't listen to what I'm about to say. But I think the final creature looked goofy. I hate to say it because everything leading up to that point was pretty darn good. But I just think the final form monster was pretty goofy. It was so great. All the suspense, you see parts of the creature. Even when it gets big, you see parts of it. All this big build up, but when it finally gets revealed, it's just like, no disrespect, to the people who made the movie and all that there. The creature, ironically, probably looked more real and terrifying in real life on set, but in the movie, because you don't get to see enough of it, and the way it was puppeteered and all this, and there was somebody inside of it as well. But anyways, the way it all came together, it just looked a little bit goofy, unfortunately. But I don't want to say it didn't ruin the movie for me. It was just a letdown. Let's put it that way. But the vast majority of the movie takes place before you even see the full creature. Really, you really only see it at the very end of the movie. So you can still enjoy the whole movie. But like I said, spoiler, the end creature does look a little bit goofy. I've heard, Movie Dumpster and Tony from Act Movies were saying that teach their own. I can't remember if they all agreed on this or what, but they seem to think that the what's his name again? Ernie Hudson from Ghostbusters, who played Justin in the movie. He is one of the few who survived until the end. They seem to think that he actually did survive the final surprise event and made it alive at the end of the movie. But I was watching the movie, I'm pretty sure he died. And in subsequent research, find out, no, according to the script, he did die. But that really irritates me too, because he deserved, if anybody there, he definitely deserved to be one of the victors at the very, very end. But apparently the movie director, the creator, he wanted it to be a shock and surprise, like one of those great tragic twists. So that was a letdown to me as well. I mean, it was, you waited so much of the movie to see these characters survive and who will make it out, and you root for these certain peoples, and then at the very last second, like one of them dies. It's just a little bit of a letdown. But anyways, I think it was a great movie overall. I think I did a nice little wrap up without giving away too much about the movie, too much specific detail. But overall, out of 10, I would say this movie deserves at least an 8. It was a great watch. I would probably even watch it again. I enjoyed it. And that's saying something because a lot of movies I wouldn't watch twice. I could even watch it again tonight, the next day after I just watched it last night, and enjoy watching the whole movie again and look out for certain things and all of that. So if you like rewatching movies, this is a rewatchable movie as well. I would say at least an 8 out of 10. I think it's ridiculous that all the critics gave it a terrible review when it came out. It was regarded as like a B movie. I don't even think it's that bad for the 80s. The facility looked really top notch. The creature effects were actually pretty good, especially compared to other creature effects in the 80s. I really don't see what the big deal is. A Rotten Tomatoes score was like 23%. I don't think the movie deserves that. I think it's a pretty good movie. It's a pretty darn good movie. I would rather watch that. I enjoyed watching that movie a lot more than a lot of modern movies that are very popular nowadays that I had to go through and watch in the theaters and ended up walking out thinking, well, this was a waste of my time. But Leviathan was pretty darn good. And again, the acting was excellent. The props, the setting, the facility, everything looked excellent. Special effects were great. Creature effects were great. The only problem I had with the creature effects was the big reveal of what the total creature looks like. It was a little bit goofy. It might have just been the camera angles because I've actually seen what the creature puppet, it's huge, what it looks like. And it actually looks pretty realistic and cool. It just might have been what they're stuck with and what they had to go through and the immobility of the creature, and them working with it. It just how it ended up looking on film. It made it come off a little bit goofy, in my opinion. But the creature itself wasn't that goofy looking. It's just how it ended up coming out. It'd be pretty cool to see this movie remade. They could remake it. You wouldn't, honest to God, you wouldn't even have to up the special effects that much at all. The creature effects, maybe modernize it a little bit, but it will always look better than CGI because this movie had no CGI as far as I know. Um, CGI will always suck when compared to real creature effects. Um, so that's one of the great things about movies from that era is you get the proper special effects without any cheesy CGI. You get real good quality acting, which was the staple at the time. That's the great thing about this movie. So I'd urge everybody to go out there and watch it. It's really, really good. And that's my 2 cents on the movie. So, anyways, take care, folks, and let me know what you think about the movie if you go watch it, and voice your opinion. Do you think they should remake the movie? I think it's a cool concept. I don't think it really parrots off of other movies that much, like everybody's trying to claim. I mean, nobody can monopolize a concept, and they didn't really parrot this concept, the base concept of a mutating creature from The Thing. It's different enough, you know what I mean? I think they could confidently go out and remake this movie, and it still be an original, authentic movie. You know what I mean? Original concept and everything. I think they should do it, and if they do it, I think they should refrain from using CGI. If they could pull off that good of a stage and setting with $20 million back in the 80s, they don't need to be spending $100, $200 million like everybody does nowadays in order to have the same effect. You know what I mean? The movie would just look even better, even without CGI. Just the more slight modern advancements that we have, I think it would be great if they could remake it. I would watch it if they remade it. I'm sure everybody else would watch it if they remade it. And I'm sure that everybody who does watch the original would really enjoy it. So, anyways, take care, folks, and see you all later.